So our story is very grassroots. We started Jaju Pierogi because we always had pierogi in our freezer. Growing up, our grandfather, our Jaju, had a deli with his siblings, and we had no mac and cheese or anything like that. It was like, if you're hungry, throw the pierogi in the pan and fry them up. And so we started connecting the dots that there wasn't like a high quality pierogi in the freezer section. So we had like corporate jobs and everything, and we were like, let's figure this out and test this out. So we started doing it part-time. So in 2017, we went full-time. I would say between 2017 and beginning of 2020, we really hustled to build a brand through events. So we did a ton of farmers markets. We started doing pop-ups at breweries and music festivals and cultural festivals. So if I say if there's any luck involved in our business, it's that we started at the same time that there was the huge brewery craze. Oh, yeah.
That's so good. Hello, CPGers. This episode is just a great hang. I was super excited to interview Vanessa White of Jaju Pierogi. She's had some social media reels go viral, and I was really interested to talk to her for a retrospective of how and why that happened, and what was the insight or feeling that her videos tapped into to get that kind of virality. Along the way, I was super interested just to learn more about pierogis, also known as Polish dumplings, and how Vanessa and her team grew the business from farmers markets and small events in Massachusetts all the way to getting national distribution with Sprouts and soon to be Whole Foods launching nationally this May. I hope you aren't already hungry, because if you are going to be dying for a pierogi by the end of this interview. Enjoy! Hello, welcome to the Startup CPG podcast. Today's guest is Vanessa White. Vanessa is the CEO of Jaju Pierogi. Those are frozen Polish-style dumplings sold in 2,000 stores nationwide, including Sprouts. She has a particularly strong skill set in social media. Maybe you've even seen one of her viral pierogi videos already. We are so excited to hear about her brand journey and some of her tips for how your brand can go viral. Welcome, Vanessa. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. Hey, that's putting a lot of pressure on me to give everyone the secrets of going viral, but I can certainly give some insight to how I think, for sure.
Vanessa is definitely about to give you the secret sauce for going viral, 100% guaranteed, maybe not guaranteed. How's
yes,
that?
100%. Exactly. Money back guarantee.
All right. And I actually got to see Vanessa not too long ago because we were both in Las Vegas for Fancy Foods. And we ended up going to the Sphere, which is that crazy dome with all of the light panels all around it that you've seen advertising for the Super Bowl and stuff. And we actually got a little group together and got to go see a movie there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, I'm happy I got that experience. I don't know that I would pay $100 to see a movie again at the Sphere, but it was definitely worth it for the experience.
It was cool, though. You could just basically look around, not quite 360, but it just sort of felt like you were outside, basically, that because it had just so much of your visual plane covered with stuff. So that was a good time. I'm glad we made it happen when we were in Vegas. I hear that place is just losing a ton of money. So who knows if it'll be around forever. It's good to have done it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the Grateful Dead is playing after U2. I started hearing, I don't know, but I feel like they've had trouble booking artists because it's so expensive to actually produce the show there. So yeah, TBD.
Oh yeah. Dead and Company. I saw announced a bunch of shows. Sorry. Man, I would go if I could go and see them or U2. Man, I mean, what an experience. But it was funny because I think we all got a little vertigo just because of how steep the seats are there. It was a little funny to see people walking out, holding on to each other, just
it's a weird height, a fear of heights thing a little bit, because you feel like you can fall into the canyon of the the movie screen kind of thing. But
that is what it feels like. Mm-hmm. All right, but we did not come here just to talk about things to do in Vegas. So let's get into it. So just to begin, do you mind just telling me a little story about how you got into this wonderful CPG industry?
Absolutely. So I think it's an interesting story because I have recognized as we've gone further along in CPG, how different businesses come at this and how they arrive where they are. So our story is very grassroots. We started Jaju Pierogi because we always had pierogi in our freezer. Growing up, our grandfather, our Jaju, had a deli with his siblings, and we had no mac and cheese or anything like that. It was like, if you're hungry, throw the pierogi in the pan and fry them up. So going to college and having our first roommates, we still had our mom would like stop at the store and drive through and drop them off at college or at our apartments. And people started to ask us where we got them. And so we started connecting the dots that there wasn't like a high quality pierogi in the freezer section. So we had like corporate jobs and everything. And we were like, let's figure this out and test this out. So we started doing it part-time. We like perfected our grandfather's recipes on my kitchen table, and then got permitted in the back of a deli and started doing farmers markets in 2016, like part-time. And then it got too much. I always say like too much to do part-time, too little to do full-time. Like there's like this weird middle ground where you like can't really do it at night while you're trying to like be a customer success manager for a tech company anymore. But then you also like aren't going to make a ton of money. So you have to still have a bunch of side hustles. So in 2017, we went full-time. I would say between 2017 and beginning of 2020, we like really hustled to build a brand from like through events. So we did like a ton of farmers markets. We started doing pop-ups at breweries and music festivals and cultural festivals. So if I say like, if there's any luck involved in our business, it's that we started at the same time that there was like the huge brewery craze. So like everyone was locally was like, oh my God, I love like this new brewery is opening and like I have to get down there, and there were lines and then people were crazy about food trucks and pop-ups and things like that. So we would go to these breweries and like sell out and it would be packed. And so it was just like a great way to kind of get people in New England to get to know about our business. And at the same time, we started like, going to stores and like dropping off samples and following up. And we were selling them in like clamshells with like cardboard wraparounds, like very, very grassroots. And then like 2018, we switched to our pouch that we have now. And 2020, we were like, all right, we got to make the shift. Like it was before COVID even happened. Our goal was always to be like a grocery brand, but we just got stuck in like this retail, like direct to consumer event kind of rut, I would say. We were a seasonal business, like a summer business, which is wild because pierogi are a cold weather food, but we were making most of our money in the summer through all these events. So 2020 came and like obviously was the big kick in the pants that we needed to basically flip our business on its head. And that had been our goal, but obviously like demand for frozen went crazy over COVID. So it taught us how to scale. And we also delivered like 2,000 meal kits throughout New England as well with like frozen pierogi, kielbasa, and like sour cream, sauerkraut, mustard, and horseradish. So that was a great branding exercise. And then from that confidence during like the time of COVID, we started pursuing larger distributor partnerships like Associated Grocers in the Northeast, Bazzuto's in the Northeast. And then, after that, I think our first UNFI account was Hannaford, and they put us in 35 stores. And then we've kind of been gradually growing from there. Now we're about 2,000 stores like Harris Teeter, Fresh Market, Whole Foods, North Atlantic, Big Y, Moms, what else? Sprouts, obviously. So yeah, there's just a lot of activity, but it's been very grassroots. We don't have any brokers or anything.
And you have some big news about a new retailer expansion, right?
Yeah. So we were part of the LEAP program with Whole Foods, the local emerging accelerator program. And we actually just did that this past year. They put us in stores in New England off cycle in November. And then they told us around Christmas, the best Christmas present, that we're going national in May. So Jaju Pierogi will be nationwide at Whole Foods for sure in June, gradually in May. So very excited about that and about the partnership. They've been awesome.
Woohoo! That's amazing. Congratulations. All right.
I'm figuring out that nationwide demo program. Like that's my biggest stressor right now, but it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, you can definitely use our partners, Grassroots, that we're just about to launch our demo partnership with. They're awesome. I've worked with them. They're the preferred demo agency for Erewhon.
Cool.
Yeah, David and Bridget are awesome. So, okay, just kind of rewinding for everybody. What's a pierogi? Because it's funny that you mentioned college, because that was the first time I actually ever heard of a pierogi. I went to college in the Midwest. Like I'm from Chevy Chase, Maryland. I don't know if it's like insular or something, but I had never heard of or had a pierogi until I went to Kenyon College in Ohio. And then it was just on the lunch menu. And I was like, this is amazing. What is this stuff? And everybody else was really into it, knew about it. I just happened not to have. So what is a pierogi? And like, how come I didn't know what that was? Like, how many people are like me? How many people just kind of had it growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are pockets of Polish people all over the United States. I call them like, well, now it's like second or third generation. And then I say there's a lot of closet Polish people all over the United States as well, which is people who are from like the Northeast or the Midwest, and they've moved elsewhere, like to the Carolinas, or they're now snowbirds. So there's a lot of us. But I wouldn't say there's not like a tremendous number of like recent immigrants that are coming. So pierogi are like Polish, Eastern European origin. There's a bunch of cousins of pierogi around Eastern Europe. So there's like pelmeni, and then there's verniki in Ukraine. So you might have heard of some of these other variations. But pierogi, I think, is the most well-known one. And as to your point, it's like if you go anywhere, like Greenpoint in Brooklyn is like very Polish historically. Anywhere in Pennsylvania, Ohio, India, like Midwest, pretty much. Chicago has the largest Polish population outside of Warsaw. So there's a lot of Polish restaurants there as well. But we found that like for the rest of the country, it's just people who write to us all the time. They're like, oh, I can't get a good pierogi out here in like LA or in Seattle or something like that. So there's a desire for it and like a nostalgic pull towards it. I say like our dough is like an egg pasta dough. The most traditional stuffings are like potato and cheese or potato and onion or sauerkraut or cabbage, just like those hearty Eastern European flavors. We are trying to make them. So kind of to your point, like I have to get the data. It's something that's on my list to do, but to kind of understand what the percentage of households are right now that are buying pierogi, which is probably like 10% or less. And so there's so much room to educate people on what they are, because they're just, every culture has their dumpling, right? So like people are eating empanadas, people are eating ravioli. Like there's a lot of things that are more commonplace, but our like pierogi are so family friendly and convenient that there's a lot of room to educate people on what they are.
So I saw in your packaging, it says obviously pierogi in big font, and then down below and kind of where the statement of identity would be on packaging, it says Polish dumplings, right? Mm-hmm. So it sounds like this is new information for me, but they're like maybe then dumplings is like a class of products. And then you have Polish dumplings, pierogis, and then you would have lots of different kinds of dumplings that you're mentioning.
Yeah. So I've actually thought a lot about this too, that dumplings a lot of times is used to refer to like Asian dumplings. And then like, there's like dumpling fests, and I'm like, what the heck? It's only Asian dumplings. But there's like, think about it, like samosa, like empanadas, momos, yeah, pelmeni, verniki, there's the all Italian stuffed pastas. Like there's so many dumpling, like different stuffed types of food, and they're all dumplings, right? I did this whole research recently about how these all evolved, and they originated in like Central Asia, and actually from there went to, China and Southeast Asia, and then kind of traveled back through the Silk Road. And so that's how like a lot of tortellini or ravioli or pelmeni or pierogi all evolved, is through trade and everything. So they're kind of all related.
Okay, perfect. That's an education for me. I did not know a lot about any kind of dumpling, to be honest, unfortunately. I think I'm like more familiar with like, I don't know what Panda Express has than like what like real authentic food is like, unfortunately. But and then I remember even like the first time I had soup dumplings, it's like, whoa, my gosh, this is amazing. And, yeah, I don't know why that's been like all adult discoveries for me. But if you do go to Dumpling Fest, definitely invite me, please. I would like to have all of the different kinds of dumplings. And I think probably a lot of other listeners would like to join in for that too.
Who doesn't love dumplings? And it's like the ultimate comfort food.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. So, okay, really cool way to think about it. And then can you just talk to me about, like, you for sure have talked to thousands of people probably who share some of your cultural heritage, who, like they're Polish or they identify as Polish or just, are really proud of that heritage. What is it about pierogi? What do pierogies mean to them? And what part of the history does that bring up for them?
Absolutely. So I think pierogi are nostalgic food for people because, yes, they had their family recipe, but also I find a lot of like Polish cuisine and East European cuisine is not talked about enough. And then people come to us too, and they're like, my ex-girlfriend was Polish and her mom used to bring these over. So there's like a lot of kind of just nostalgic connections across the board. Like you had them in college. People grew up in Polish areas. Maybe they were Italian, but the family next door, their grandmother used to make them. Like it's just nostalgia all around. But I think like, just like it actually crosses cultures. If you think about, the pierogi is the example for us, but also like there's plenty of other things like stuffed cabbage rolls, guamki. There's other things. But in Italian cuisine, it might be like the nonna's like pasta sauce, right? It kind of bridges all kinds of cuisines that a family had a recipe. And they're all different. Let's be very clear. Just like people argue about pasta sauce, people argue about the right way to make pierogi as well. But they all have their recipe. And then it was like a pinch of this, a feel of that, a this, and there wasn't written down, right? Or the elder that had it was like, oh, like leave me alone. Like I'll tell you someday. And then they never told them. So what we hear all the time is like, oh my God, I haven't had pierogi like this since my grandmother made them or my mother made them or whoever. And they don't have a recipe or it's a lot of work or they can't get it right. And there's just a lot of like, that's missing from the market because you just have like a Mrs. T's who serves a purpose, but does not have like the quality of ingredients that a babci, which is grandmother, used. So that's kind of where we come into play. So there's just like these really nostalgic stories. Like people have told us we've made them cry in a good way. Like they bite into them and it's like, oh my gosh, this is just like my grandmother. So just like a tradition and a thing like around Christmas time, people get into assembly lines and they roll out the dough and they pinch. And it's just like a really warm memory for people.
Okay. I'm super interested to know more about this. One, because dumplings and pierogies are all delicious, but two, just because, I've seen how your social media clips have gone viral and a bunch of instances. And I'm just trying to understand why that is. Like, what is it that it's tapping into? So we'll come back to that in a little bit when we talk about social media strategy. And then, so when you're going into stores, you mentioned like the household penetration is not super high for pierogies. When you're pitching stores, are you trying to displace big pierogi? Like, are there incumbent competitors on the set, or are you maybe the only option and you're pitching a story about incrementality? What's it like?
Yeah. So I would say that I've concluded that we can coexist with Mrs. T's, right? On the shelf, because they're like a $3.99 for a dozen and we're like a $10 for a dozen. And so you're talking about two different customers, or like the customer that is kind of reluctantly bought Mrs. T's for years is going to be like, oh my God, another option, and like be willing to reach for it and pay for the difference. So we can kind of coexist. I would say like our biggest competitor, who isn't like as widely distributed as Mrs. T's, but does pop up here and there, is probably KeHE's, which is KASIA. They are kind of like a middle road between us and Mrs. T's. Still not the same taste or ingredient profile, but it's kind of like a $7.99 price point versus ours is like a $9.99 or depending like $10.99. So people are like, if they're going to pay more, that's kind of like our main competitor, but we don't run into them in that many places. So I would say like the biggest hurdle for us is really that price point, and having someone understand that like people are tired of the cardboard taste. And like, again, and people say like Mrs. T's made a place for pierogi on the shelf. So we have to be grateful for them for like introducing the world to what these things are. But I think it can be tough because you have to really demonstrate and justify the difference in that it's two different products, and it's not trying to displace them. It's just offering an alternative.
All right. So shot fired. Vanessa from Jaju just is taking on Miss T's big pierogi conglomerate and saying they taste like cardboard.
I honestly aspire to have a relationship with Mrs. T's like like Wendy's and Burger King on social media. Like I aspire to that. If one day they take a shot at me, I will be so excited because then we can go back and forth.
Yeah, I think the PR playbook for them will always be to say who if they ever get asked about you, right? I've never heard of them. Are they in stores?
Yeah.
But yes, that's a very good goal. I like it. And so you mentioned like, if someone came to visit you at, college, they might stop by the store and pick up pierogies. Is that what they were doing? They were buying Miss T's or something like that, or were they making it from scratch?
Yeah. So what happened in college and like right out of college is that our mom was going to our family deli. So like we had this, I in middle school, like worked there and helped make all the products and pierogi and kielbasa and guamki and everything like that for like $40 on a Saturday, with my grandfather. So my mom was still going to that store and she was stopping. She was like, do you want anything at the store? Like I'm coming through. And so we would always put in our pierogi order because who doesn't want pierogi in the freezer in college, obviously. And so like our friends, roommates, whatever, they were definitely buying the ones, Mrs. T's or Trader Joe's or something like that. And they were like, oh my gosh, like, how can I get these? And it like looking back in my childhood, it was like a constant theme where my mom would just, wherever we would go to a party or we would go somewhere, she would just like bring a cooler of pierogi and kielbasa from our family store and be like, here's the gifts. And it's funny because now today, that's like my mom's love language is buying our pierogi off the shelf and like gifting them to everybody.
My mom would do that too.
Yeah. So I think she single-handedly drives velocity at like the Yarmouth Port Shop and Shop on Cape Cod. But yeah, so that's kind of like people just were buying and they, these kind of mainstream options because there's only a couple delis in the Boston area that make them and have like they make them just for the retail spot or they sell them just there. So there weren't options widely available at all.
So when you're demoing and getting people to buy product and sampling and they try it, they like it, like how many of them have that kind of association already? Like, oh yeah, I've had these before, my girlfriend's family is Polish or something like that, versus people just being like, oh yeah, like I haven't really had these before. Oh, that's good. And these are easy to make. Great. I'll buy some.
I would say it's like 50-50, but as I've talked to more brands about like their demo experiences, I will say that like our demo experience is very lively and positive. Like we're literally frying this pierogi in butter on a griddle in Whole Foods. So like people walk in the door and they're like, what's that smell? Like it's just butter, but it like attracts people. And a lot of times when we do demos, like literally, I can hardly keep up with like all the interests of people. And so I joke that like, I have not yet done a 4-hour demo because I usually can sell out the shelf in 2 hours and we're frozen too. So like, obviously they can't bring in a million bags, but like, I've got people from all backgrounds that they bite into. I always joke that the jalapeno cheddar goes first when I demo because people bite into it and they're like, you see this like look on their face, like, whoa. And then they come back and they're like, where do I get these? And they're just at this, this like look on their face, like, I need more of this. And so then you walk them over. So it's like 50-50. But what I like most about doing the demos is the people that are the 50% who have never had them. And they're like, sure. And you see this like kind of like neutral agreement to try your product. And then they come back around the corner and they're like, wait a minute, I need that in my life.
All right. Well, I'm very excited for my samples coming then.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to start with the jalapeno cheddar ones. So, okay. So when you're talking to like early retailers or when you started getting, Stop and Shop and those kind of, next level buyers, are they already kind of sold on this idea of, okay, yes, the premiumization now is coming for the pierogi category, or do you really have to explain it to them? And like, are they really looking at, hey, how much of our shopper base has Polish roots or would be interested in this, stuff like that? Or, was it really hard? Was it easy?
I think it really depends on the retailer. And I think that probably goes for every product that gets sold into a retailer. But like Whole Foods was very much like, we don't have a national pierogi and that's disgraceful. Like they said that, like they're like, we need a national pierogi. And so they were very focused on like, that wasn't a hole in their offering. Like a Big Y, which is near us, they are focused in like a historically Polish area with in between like central and western Mass and Connecticut. So Big Y has like a pierogi door. Like they have like 4 or 5 options in there. So that's like another end of the spectrum. Then there's retailers like Moms where they just carry us. Like they don't, I think there's some retailers that know they have to have a pierogi option, but they're, maybe like a Mom's isn't going to carry Mrs. T's. So there you go. So we're the option there. So it kind of varies in terms of the reasoning. I would say like Stop and Shop has definitely been one of the most difficult accounts because they're very conventional. And like we kind of went in there being like, we're a local, like we have a good brand recognition in our backyard through all of the events. But for example, like Stop and Shop, they didn't put us with Mrs. T's, which is the potato section for Stop and Shop, and they put us with the pasta. So if someone, like a lot of our sales are brand discovery because like I said, people have been buying Mrs. T's for years and they want something different. So it's hard because people will go into Stop and Shop knowing that we're in there and say, oh, I couldn't find you. It's like, well, I know you probably looked at the pierogi section, even though I've tried my hardest to message this online. And you actually have to go to the eggplant farm. Yeah. So it really depends on the retailer. But like, the other joke I always make is like, if you get a buyer that has like a ski or a, it's or a chick in the last name, I'm like, sweet. I got someone on my side already because they're going to be a pierogi connoisseur. So
that's amazing. I can imagine. And I mean, that's cool thinking about like, just what are all those opportunities where there is, I mean, a lot of people who are interested in the product line and they just can't get it if they're shopping at the more natural retailers who just don't have an option like that. I would go nuts with that story, just going to like the Whole Foods of the world and being like, look, here's the data. In like trying to educate them on here's what's happening to your shoppers, like because I would guess that pierogies could be like a trip driver, like, oh, I want to make pierogies and I'm going to go to the store to get them. And if they go there and they don't have it, they are going to take their business to another store. And I'm sure some of this, like Bizer data, like leaky bucket type stuff could actually show them what they're missing because they don't have that option. I imagine you're leveraging that really well to get a lot of good conversations.
We definitely need to be, I mean, I would say that like, because of our come up and how we got into this and just like, it was a lot of elbow grease and hours worked and personality and like, entertainers and good story and really good product. That's something we need to work on, I would say, in the next year. We actually were in production making pierogi until a year ago. Like I was literally washing dishes. So this last year has been a change in a great way, but we've been able to start being more strategic. I should say that I do the marketing and sales for Jaju and my sister does the finance and operations. And she's like really the data junkie. And I'm kind of the one that like smiles and shakes hands. So we do need to get better about the data, but anecdotally, it is 100% what you're saying. And I do kind of pitch that way. That it's like people will drive for good pierogi. Like I hear that all the time from customers, especially on social media. Like, oh, I'm driving there this weekend. Or we get emails like, we're taking a road trip from Connecticut to Maine and we're going to stop in all the stores to try to find this flavor. And it's like, okay, so yeah.
Amazing. All right. So, and then, what was that process like of making it yourself? Are you glad that you did it that way until you switched, or do you wish you had maybe found a manufacturing partner before that?
I think we just had like our own journey to like arrive at where we did because, I think when you're making the product, you're understanding, all the little things you can do to like make it better or make it more efficient. And you stay close to the product quality, and the product quality is our selling point, right? So that's, I think I wouldn't change what we did. We were making them by hand through, I would say, 2018. We used to stand 4 girls around a table and like laugh so hard all day long and just make like 1,000 pierogi by hand, just like telling stories. And that was an amazing memory. We were hand boiling our pierogi even through like a Hannah Birds launch. So it was like 24-hour shifts, like literally like, okay, I'll be there from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Like crazy, crazy stories that I wouldn't trade for anything. And I think like we kind of went through this path of like, do we want to move to another facility, raise money, build it out? Like trying to find space was really hard. I'm in a lot of metro areas. I'm sure it's the same thing is happening where in Boston, like any industrial space is like, ooh, condo building. Like, so there's not like a lot of motivation for people to rent it at an industrial rate. So we just struggled with that. And then on the same timeline, we had these mentors in the business that had a larger facility and they made like stuffed foods, like egg rolls, dumplings, empanadas, things like that. And they purchased the same machinery that we had. I trained them on it, which was great. And so then like down the line, we said, oh, we want to start making a kielbasa pierogi and bring it to market, but we don't have a USDA facility. They do. Let's test it out there and see if they can make it. And then we're like, okay, well, like if they could do that, let's try other flavors. And then the way it worked, like it was late 2022, it was like we landed Stop and Shop, QFC. And then shortly after it was like Sprouts and like the volume that was coming in. We were working 6 days a week at the co-packer plus like 5 full days a week at our current existing facility just to hit all the production numbers. And it just like forced us to learn all the lessons really quickly with the co-packer and be like, oh, okay, I guess we could do this. I guess we could do this now and like move it over. And it's local. It's like an hour from me and a half an hour from my sister. And so our production manager who ran our equipment in our facilities actually running our line at the co-packer. So it was like a nice transition to making sure we still have that quality, but having like access to like all of the equipment and the infrastructure that we needed.
All right. Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. So I'd love to just dig into a little bit, a topic I know you know a lot about, which is your social media strategy. I've loved seeing a bunch of your videos, just, really very clever and fun videos. I think, showing off your personality and just, very food focused and, just like showing pierogies and ways of cooking and really interesting stuff. And I scrolled all the way back on your TikTok page just because I am so interested in that evolution of like, what did it look like those first couple of days, weeks, months when you were posting? And, were there signs that like, yeah, keep at it, like keep putting tons of effort into this. This is going to grow eventually and become a big part of your strategy. So can you just talk about like, yeah, the evolution of it? So thinking all the way back to when you started posting and like, what did you start learning and what were the insights of like, oh, that hit, like, yeah, I'll lean into that more.
Absolutely. So I would say that, when my sister and I started this business, there were a couple things that we overlapped on, and then there were things that we did not. So like from the very start, I was the marketing person and she was the money person. And then we kind of overlapped on operations and stuff like that for a while and sales as well. And so obviously like when we started, Instagram, Facebook were like a whole different creature where it was just like still photos and you could get away with a lot less. Like not like get away with, but like you could post like flavor photos or you could post like pictures of you and it would get like a good reaction. And so I think back at that point, my sister and I have always been the brand. Like we have no problem being the brand because their story is key to the brand. So I think that's like one thing that I would say to entrepreneurs is just like identify, it's really good to have a face to the brand because then people feel connected. If you're comfortable being that person, it's just people like cheerleading. That's one thing they like to do. They like to cheerlead. It can't always be you and always be you, but like it's good to rotate yourself in. So then that was kind of like that phase. Then of course we entered like the reel and the TikTok and everything phase, which I'll be honest, I think I was like super overwhelmed about when it first happened. But I think especially when we really started winding down on events. Because we, like I said, up until like 2020, and even in 2020, we were doing so many of those meal kit deliveries. Like I call it like it was informational marketing versus content for the sake of content. So there's two different types of kind of feeds. So informational marketing, we were like, we're going to be here this weekend. We have these flavors. Like it was very just telling people what was happening. When we started moving more towards wholesale and away from the events, I was like, oh my gosh, I just have to create content for the sake of content. Like I have to start creating videos to just talk about pierogi and like why and how and whatever. And so that was like a little intimidating, but I would say I've really hit my stride this past year and kind of cracked a little bit of the code. And I've also started consulting on the side, and I work with small businesses. I have about 5 clients that I help generate content for them as well. And so what I tell people is like everyone's social media, my personal social media, yours, is our own personal brand page, right? And so it's all, everything you share, everything you post is a reflection of you. So as a brand, what you need to do is create content that people are going to be able to express themselves through. And so then they share it and they're like, haha, this is me. Or like, oh my God, can you believe this? Or whatever. So you just have to like create the content that they see themselves in. Right. So that's been my whole brand vibe on social media is like, whether it's sometimes I'll post stuff about being a small business owner, which can be relatable to people, but a lot of it, I'm really leaning into the Polish American culture because going back to what we were talking about, there's a huge nostalgic connection to pierogi and to Polish food. So, and like identifying yourself with that. And so I've really leaned into that and just, I'm always thinking like, would someone share this? Like how, and so I have to say I've made some mistakes in not branding certain things, like my Halloween pierogi trick or treat post went like crazy viral and got stolen by 1 million people and put on 1 million meme pages. It was like a bucket of pierogi and it was like, please take one. The peak was, I think, the New Jersey Devils took it and it photoshopped it and like put some, I don't know, something in it. And they were like, and I was like, that's my doorstep. Thank you. So I've gotten smarter with always having a bag in the background, or if I do like a still photo, I kind of like blend the Jaju bags into the background because I've had a lot of other pierogi businesses take my stuff and like crop out my logo or things like that. And I'm like, guys, which is like the internet's going to internet, right? But I'm like, not entertained. Like yeah. I don't do your marketing, I do my marketing. So anyway, that's the story.
It's you can totally see how that could happen where, I mean, I'm not an expert on social media, but what I know is, when there are popular memes out there, like you can do the meme and apply it to your business. And probably that's what they're thinking, not like, this person actually spent a lot of time creating this very authentic and clever content, and maybe I shouldn't just steal that for my competitive business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did like one of the most recent ones. This is my last lesson learned was the pierogi in a Stanley is like what we use our Stanleys for. And it was like, I like unscrewed the Stanley cover and put pierogi in it. And I took like the reel is harder to steal. So people don't really steal the reel, but it's the still photo that goes on Facebook. So I put our logo in the bottom right corner, and then the store in New York cropped it out and put it on their page and got like, I had like 6,000 likes or something like that. And they were getting like tens of thousands. I kid you not, Daniel. I called that store. I was like, hi, can I speak to you person who runs your Facebook? And I was like, you got to take this down. I was like, this is not cool that you cropped this out, because I was like, don't take other people's content. And they did. They took it down. But I was like, I don't work for you.
I hope you got an order out of them too.
I didn't, but it's okay. I don't want anyone else's pierogi. I want my pierogi. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh no, I meant them carrying your product. That's
oh
what I was...
yeah, no. They made their own. That's what they were advertising.
Yeah. Well, that's
but
a
yeah,
good...
at the end of the day, it's just about like, I also think that people go for shock factor too. So you see, like I do, like my recent one was like dipping pierogi in fondue. Cause it's at least school vacation week up here in Massachusetts. So a lot of people are skiing. So I was like, okay, put the ski in a phrase ski, like the Polish last name ski. I did a Polish trifle where I layered like pierogi, sour cream, kielbasa, chives, onion, sauerkraut, like twice. I got a lot of Rachel from Friends comments on that one because I guess Rachel in Friends made like a terrible trifle, not a Friends person myself. But the only thing I will say is like
I think it was a dessert layer that also had like I don't know, sour cream or something. Yeah. Oh yeah, something crazy.
Yeah. Beef and peas. So people were like, Rachel? Question mark. But the only thing I will say about going viral that's like really a hard thing to come to terms with, because now we've had probably 6 or 8 or so, maybe like, multi-million views, is that people are really mean.
People are horrible. I know this.
Really mean.
I know this about the internet. People are the worst.
Yeah.
It's just like, no matter what you do. And honestly, it makes me so scared to like, our Instagram is over 20K, which for B2B is something that's really exciting for us. It gives us a great chance to feature brands and do a lot of cool stuff. But 100% of the time, if we have a reel that goes viral, if we're like promoting a post or something, some jerk from the internet will just come on and try to ruin your day. And if it's like a woman on there, they'll be like, looks like a dude. Or if it's like you, they'll just be like, what an embarrassing person. Like they should die. Like it's like,
it's terrible. It's terrible.
Amazing.
So I've taken the approach that if you troll me, I'm going to troll you back.
How's that working out? Because I'm really tempted to do that, but I'm just like, it's not worth my time. I also have seen other people who, like Ali Bonar, I've seen on her Instagram, she'll just respond to all of the haters with, thanks for boosting my engagement.
Yeah, so I try to kill them with kindness / sarcasm a little bit. And so like a lot of my responses, I mean, sometimes I respond honestly, where someone like on my trifle, it's like, oh, a bunch of processed food. And it's like, no, actually none of this is processed. It's literally like anything you would eat with pierogi, like on its own, sour cream, chives, sauteed onions. We cooked ourselves, like the pierogi are ours. Like there's nothing in here that's junk. Like sometimes I respond very like, honestly to things. And then other times like, oh yeah. So we shared one of our grandfather's recipes, which was pineapple and cheese, which is like not traditional. And I literally say that in the reel. And someone, like multiple people have come on that reel and told me that my grandfather should be ashamed of himself as calling him a Polish person. I'll call himself Polish and like no self-respecting Polish person. And so I just reply back and I'm like, I really hope that no one comes and insults your family that doesn't even know you on the internet, like whatever. But then a lot of times I get like even more playful. Like,
but don't you kind of hope someone does?
Well, yeah. So I do, right? But I think, and sometimes if they're really mean, I put them on blast on our story, and I'm like, everyone send them a hug today. Send Anna a hug today, everybody.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And then all of I call them the pierogi hive, like go into the comments and are like, Anna, do you need to talk to someone today? Like, please let me know. And it's so funny. They like talk to these people like they're a toddler. So we kind of have fun with it. But some people who keep going, like some people keep being terrible, I go, nope. And I block them because it's like, you're not my customer. You're starting to insult other people who are my followers. It's like, no.
Mainly I just block people who fool about at all. which is not satisfying. It's way more satisfying to like try to go onto their page. If they say something like really out of place, like, okay, I bet I can see who you work for. Maybe I'll tag them, like, come get your boy in from our comments.
There was a girl who like made some comment and I went on her profile and she just was quoting Taylor Swift, like, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. So I just was like, just like Jessica said, she's the problem, it's her. And like, I show like, you're on the internet, you like are putting yourself out there and I will pick on you if you pick on me, like not in like a mean way, not in like a over the top way, but like I'll play back, but it does boost engagement. So it's okay.
Okay. I just want to like make myself some pierogies and just sit and watch that. And pierogies and watch the comments. I had it recently on our Startup CPG. One of our reels got a lot of views and comments.
Was that the one about the slotting fee?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It's really good. If anybody wants to check it out on our Instagram, it was just like two guys losing their laughing basically. And it was when Safeway NorCal tries to get you for $100 per store per SKU slotting. And it was pretty funny. And then a lot of people commenting on that one, like, got a couple thousand reactions and then two guys just going at it in the comments. It's actually not about us. It's just them insulting each other.
I know.
Just like, I don't know if I should step in here, but I guess it does boost our engagement. I don't know. I mean, like they didn't really say anything over the line. That's just like, what's happening here?
Yeah, no, it's like, it's just knowing the game at the end of the day. And like, I do feel, Instagram or Meta and TikTok serve people things that they think will be interesting to them. So if there's a reel that's getting a lot of engagement, even if it's people yelling at each other about how much sour cream is being used or something dumb, like, yep, like have at it, and like I said, I really only block people who are absolutely like troll, like their purpose in life is to troll us and literally go through our grid and start. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. By the way, I think we can all agree, like we've all had these thoughts. We've all seen a post, been like, that's stupid or that's not right. But like, we don't go and actually post. Like, what is it that drives a person to actually go and post that comment? Like, what's the outcome that they want from this? Like, maybe, okay, they responded and they're like, yeah, you're totally right. We'll take down our entire business because you had some random like video gamer from the internet took time away from like twitching and talking smack to come and talk smack personally on our page.
I mean, we get so many comments about how we spell our brand name, right? Because I could go into this too. So Jaju, Jaju, is the phonetic spelling of like an affectionate way of saying grandfather. So in Polish, it would be DZIA, DZIU. And so we get everyone who has a master's degree or a PhD in internet marketing, whatever, that is coming, or social media comments, marketing, whatever, who's coming in to be like, that's not how you spell it. Some of our stuff goes viral in Poland, which I'm always like, oh no. When that happens, I can tell when it starts happening because I start seeing the story shares that are like in Europe, right? Or they're in like, some of like the Polish freezer, there was like a lot that were like, what is it? Cyrillic? Like for like in Russian, like the different alphabet, like there's a lot of that. So when some of our stuff goes viral in Poland, like we just, a Polish American influencer just posted us yesterday and did like a collaborator request. I was like, sure. But I was like, oh God, because then they start going through the feed and being like, this isn't traditional. Like no one in Poland eats pierogi this way. And I'm like, ugh.
That sort of sounds like any press is good press if they're like an influencer and they're just putting your brand out there.
That one was good. She was wonderful, but I was like, oh, because she posts in Polish, like her posts are in Polish and she's really catering to like a very like the really recent Polish immigrant to the US. Sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, this is going to pull people in here. That's going to start. But just so everyone knows, I have officially signed up for a Polish class. Because I didn't learn from my mom or my grandmother. So I've signed up for a Polish language class online through this university in Krakow, and it starts on Monday. So now I can take on all of my haters in the comments.
It's
so exciting.
I love it. Oh my God, you're going to school so that you can talk smack to Instagram haters. I love it. I thought that's funny. I really thought where that was going is like, so I can really understand and embrace my, Polish because I want to talk smack to those guys in Polish. You're a champ.
So much, but like, because it's kind of like a recent or it's like an up and coming, like I want to say like we're trying to make it more mainstream, right? Like look at all the things we've done to tacos. Like 90% of the things we've done to tacos are not, is not how they eat tacos in Mexico, right?
Are you saying they eat them on the other 6 days of the week also? Not just Taco Tuesday?
I don't know that anyone is ate a jackfruit taco. Like, I don't think that was a thing, So I'm we're trying to make pierogi more mainstream, but there's still a lot of protectionism. Is that the word? It's people are very protective of it as a food and as a tradition, which is again, it's a big positive because as we talked about, people will really seek them out. They'll drive for good ones. They feel really connected, but they also can be very judgy. We made a reel that went not super viral, but got a few thousand likes about the Polish smile. And people can't see this on the podcast, but basically the Polish smile of approval is no smile. If someone likes your pierogi and they're Polish, most of the time they're just going to look at you and not say anything negative. And they'll be this kind of silent approval. So it's hard to get a positive reinforcement from an Eastern European. But people will walk up to me while I'm 45 orders deep at Newport Folk Festival or Boston Calling and start speaking to me in Polish. And I'm sorry to disappoint. I don't know what you're saying. So it's I want to be able to converse with people who are very well intended, but also I can't use Google Translate anymore to decipher all the swear words.
All right. Well, good for you. I was just thinking there's a very epic quote. I think it's Horatius. I was just looking that up to check it, which is the aim of the poet is to inform or delight. And, that's you can think about a lot of art can do that. But actually now I think we have to add on also to inform or delight or trigger. I think also because wow, you actually I think people do in some ways probably enjoy going on and leaving those hateful comments on just about anything on the internet and expressing their opinion. And that is a real reaction. And that actually helps things get shared as well.
People love good people love the comment section as well. So I also like to contribute to that too, where but I'm just kind of joking back with these people with the dry humor, that people come in and they also understand more about our brand and our brand voice and our brand vibe from my comments, right? So that's another layer of it that people are I've had people be every one of your comments made me laugh out loud. And so then they follow us and I love what you're doing. I love you make me laugh all the time. And that's the best compliment for me is being a brand that people enjoy seeing the content that we're putting out.
And I think because I've been in these situations before and people make these comments and you're you have no idea what's going on. For me, I would be you have no idea about these 10 things that I'm doing that if you knew about them, you would care so much and just be thank you actually for and, in your instance, thank you for promoting, awareness of Polish culture through this food and being able to share it. And I know because, I've looked through your website that, you actually have sponsored a Polish American women's scholarship as well. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we partnered with the Boston Polish American Citizens Club. And I'm actually thinking, man, I should really expand this now that we're selling nationwide, but it's originated that way. So every spring, we have around, because it's Women's Month next month, right? International Women's Month. So we launch it around March. It's actually open right now, but I start announcing it and promoting it around March because being a woman-owned business, being two sisters, and really kind of going back to what we talked about at the very beginning, we did this all on our own. So we took our first round of like not even that much funding, but some funding in November. So we got to those 2,000 doors by knocking on doors ourselves, like using our connections, meaning like another peer in the space, not like Uncle, Jimmy who has $1 billion. Like, hey, do you have the buyer for this store? Or like doing a lot of Google sleuthing. And, we really just worked really hard to build this thing from the ground up. And people have said like, oh, you've kind of seen like an American dream, where it's like, I guess you could say that. I mean, I like to think that people see or inspired by, because a lot of people who follow us have like saw us at breweries in 2016, and so they've really seen us like come up and really grow this business. So like going back to the woman-owned business thing, it's like, if we can inspire women to like take the leap on an idea that they have and know that they can do it, if they have like the business acumen and they have the drive and whatever, they can build something without having a ton of money or without having, a million connections. Like, you can do it. So through the scholarship, it's like kind of inspiring women and like young women who are pursuing any kind of education, and so like in supporting that education. It just seemed like the perfect combination. It's like heritage, supporting women, all of that. So we're, working to grow it every year. And last year, so the first year we gave away 1 scholarship. Last year we gave away 2. So we're working to keep on growing that scholarship. And that's just like, our way to give back. And people don't know that there's like this Polish American Citizens Club either in Boston. And like they, like in so many places, they're closing. Like the Polish churches are closing, or the cultural centers are closing. And that's just not just Polish, but like a lot of cultural centers. So it's like keeping that alive and keeping, bringing people to the Polish club and making them aware that they could go and have a beer there anytime they want.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to you ladies for supporting women in that way. That's really incredible. And I hope all of the haters will somehow find out about that and then probably realize they aren't doing anything in their lives to help anybody except tearing people down on the internet, and maybe feel at least a moment of regret.
It's okay. They have all 11 followers and they live in their mom's basement for the most part, I think. So it's okay.
They're just mad because their mom's not making them any pierogies.
Exactly. I'd be mad too. I'd be mad too.
So back to just the social media strategy a little bit. I've seen, like all the videos you mentioned. I've seen a really funny one where you had pierogies coming out of your freezer ice maker, like popping into a cup, and the sound is really cool from it. And another where you had the Stanley mug where you had the pierogies in it and a car holder. All of that stuff was great. So if you're talking to an early brand, one of your clients or just anybody out there, and they're just trying to understand like how much effort should we actually be putting into social media? Because I've seen some brands who are just like it's almost like a website for them. They're just like putting up a lot of product photos, and I just want to tell them like, hey, do you as an Instagram user follow a bunch of brands and like their flavor shots? Like, no, why would you care about that stuff? Like, Instagram is not really for that. Like I'm like, unless you're really going to do content, kind of like what you were saying, that like, that resonates with you, that you can like see something in yourself in it that gives you a reason to want to share it. I'm kind of like, either don't put in really much effort at all, or put in a really serious amount of effort to make it part of your strategy. What do you think? Yeah,
so I agree with you. I think that, so I guess I'll tackle this in a couple different answers. One is I tell everybody, and it also applies to me, no one cares about our brand. Like, there's very few brands out there that people like. It's there's the jokes, the status symbol brand. So there's like, I don't even know if status symbol is the right word, but it's like the brand, like Erewhon or like the Graza right now is like the big one, right? That comes to mind for me. Obviously, like some things, like at least I'm from New England, so the whole Dung Kings thing from Super Bowl was huge. So it's like the Dung Kings sweatsuit. Like, there are certain things that people do want to associate themselves with, and therefore, like, the brand being prevalent is okay, but you have to work to get there. You have to work really hard to get there. And I aspire to be one of those brands at one point, but they did a lot of Graza did a lot of work for product placement with a lot of influencers I was watching. And so that it's not, doesn't happen overnight, but for the most part, for the rest of us, for the 99.9% rest of us, no one cares about your brand. They do, but they don't care in the sense of, to your point, if you're posting a product, just a product photo, no one cares because they're not seeing themselves in that. They're not associating with that. So you have to do work. I'm really focused on placing our product in the background or working with influencers that are placing our product in the background. I'm partnering with Steph, the sommelier, coming up in March, and she's in Canada, but she does wine pairings with different foods. And she has about 150,000 followers, I think. She's been wonderful to work with. But she was okay, well, for this much money, I'll just put, I'm not going to call out your brand, but it'll be in the background, right? And I'll be cooking them up and be pairing them with wine. I'm that's actually perfect because I don't want it to be so forced like an ad. I just want people to keep seeing the product tangentially. So that's what I tell people too, is the marketing has to be tangential. And I always say that word, but I think that's what I mean to your brand, right? It has to be parallel, but not all about the brand. It has to be tied to it, but not, it's kind of hanging in the background.
Because it's not a TV ad, right? A TV ad, great. If you just want stuff that makes your product look amazing and have somebody saying, oh, it's so good, great. Yeah, TV ad, they kind of have to watch that. But social media content, you choose whether or not you want to engage with that kind of content and whether you're going to actually proactively go and give it a reaction or share it. And if it doesn't resonate with you, or at least be roll over on the floor, laughing, kind of funny, probably, unless you'll have to have some really compelling reason to do it. And I mean, looking through your stuff, I could see at least through your TikTok coming kind of from the early days, anyone scroll all the way back and you'll see early reels were getting 200, 300 views. And then you had a couple hits that would be very cooking centric. Mm-hmm. Cooking kielbasa and pierogies, and then just really focusing on the food. And those are the ones that just started to hit. So I could just, at least my observation, probably you're oh, okay, that's what I should be focusing on more, is this just the culture of cooking and pierogies. And that's very familiar. And you can almost smell them cooking when you see the video, that's very evocative for people. And then I could see you leaning more into that. And then, the brand is there, but it's subtle because that's not why people are going to like the post. It's more because of this thing that it's tapping into about them. And then just I could see the likes and plays going up over time. So getting to 400 and now 600 is your baseline. And then there you're starting to get some that hit to 2K, 5K, 17K. Yeah. And then just kind of marching along that path and then having, obviously one that hit, I think 1.2 million and a bunch of other stuff like that. Is that a good retro view on it?
Yeah. I think that, so a couple of things that I learned on TikTok, the cooking the fresh kielbasa one did well. And then the other one that did well, early on, was talking about, what is it? Oh my God, I'm going to blank on his name. Anyway, a Polish Revolutionary War hero that, on July 4th, I talked about this guy who was the head of the American cavalry, who was Polish. And I learned, oh yeah, people like history. They like Polish American cultural history too. They like to learn. So then I was this is an idea. This is an angle too, where it's we're really a Polish American cultural brand, and sharing again, it's not about it doesn't have to be about the pierogi all the time, right? It doesn't have to be directly about our product all the time. It's about creating this brand personality, which for me is really leaning into that Polish American culture. So I have talking about the evolution of the pierogi that we talked about on the Silk Road. I have a graphic, and I'm planning on doing a green screen over kind of talking about the evolution of the pierogi. I did a Substack about that recently. And it's just kind of informing people about Polish culture. So that is one angle. Going back to TikTok, I enjoy just testing things on TikTok. I mean, we have around 1,700 followers now, which has been I think I had 100 last year. So that's been good. And on Instagram, we were at less than 10,000 in August. And now we're at 26. And I have not paid for a single one of those followers on either platform. It's just been through content creation, which is something I like to toot my own horn about. And I mean, one of the goals is definitely like starting to shift the epicenter of those followers, which is happening. It's on Instagram. Obviously, we were super Massachusetts heavy. Now it's New York. And there's a lot of Chicago, obviously Polish people, Chicago kind of blending in there. But I'm trying to that's one of my big goals for this year is to I am going to start doing some paid stuff in some target markets to see how it impacts sales. But places like Tampa, Florida, or, Sacramento, California, or just like kind of picking out some target markets and really isolating them and saying, okay, if I do Google ads, if I do paid social in these markets, like, do I see a bump in sales and followers?
I imagine you will, because you've done the work now to build up that kind of core following, which is really important. I can see your engagement rates are really high. Typically, like when you're doing posts now on Instagram, if you have more than 20,000 followers and you're getting 600 to 1,000 likes on a normal post, that's a really high rate. That's really cool to see. So I can tell just by looking at it that you didn't buy those. Those are organic followers, and so because you've now built that up, I expect once you start doing some promoted posts, it's going to do really well, especially because everything that you've dialed in about your content, what really resonates, but also because I think just like Amazon reviews, if you go in and try to, advertise your new Amazon product and you have no ratings, then no one's going to buy it. But now you're validated by this very intense, I won't say cult-like, but definitely a core following of pierogi lovers.
Yeah, it is. There are a few cult members for sure. I definitely have the people who are always chatting with me in the DMs who are super fans, and I love it. It's amazing. People who are really, really into the brand, and that. That's huge word of mouth marketing too, right? And so I'm always responding to people everyone gets a really thorough answer from me, or a funny answer or whatever. If someone puts this on their story, I respond to them. And I know that when I was younger and I interacted with some brands that I really liked and they actually responded and acknowledged, I was like, oh my God, they talked to me. I don't know, so I try to give everyone the time of day. But yeah, I think you're at TikTok. I just kind of throw things up there and see how they do as a testing ground for Instagram. And then if they do well, and I don't think they're worthy of a full Instagram post, on the feed, I just share them to the story. I just feel like TikTok is a little bit more I don't know, informal, kind of throw it up, see what happens, whatever. And I just try to be vulnerable. I've taken videos of myself, standing in front of a shelf and being oh my God, you guys are actually buying our product. There's bags missing here, and it's special every time you walk into a store and you're oh my God, there's someone who actually bought our product. Even 6 or 8 years in, you're wow, people actually like this. And I don't even know these people that are buying this product. So, so I just try to be vulnerable and real and just test things out on TikTok. And then if they do well, pop them up. Some things I know are going to do well, like that Polish trifle. I was here it goes. Throw it up there. Can't wait for all the people to yell at me. Sometimes I know, but other times TikTok is a good testing ground.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I think that's true for everybody. You have different personalities. And if your brand is a reflection of your personality, then you can use your strengths and your authenticity to resonate with people, which will make them engage with the content. Right. And maybe you're, authentically fun and vulnerable. And that is the thing that people are going to resonate with. Because if you try to be something different, if you try to be confident boss, okay, people probably see that that's not genuinely you. And because when people are acting and not doing something that's so genuine, okay, that's not going to resonate as much. So I always just try to think about and talk to people about find the things that are really are true about you and your brand, and that are going to different angles that'll resonate with people, and then really lean into those.
But just to answer the last part of your question about I agree that people have different strengths. And so if your strength is not social, you don't have anybody that, and I always say for me, I tell people, you got to be willing to make an ass of yourself. Sorry for swearing on your podcast. But I feel for me, it's as a business owner to a certain extent, you have to be comfortable putting yourself out there. If you're not, or if you don't have anyone on your team that can kind of run it, it can serve as a landing page, but you have to do work elsewhere. So like PR is not my strong suit. Like I don't really have a lot of training in it. I kind of see my social media as my PR in a lot of ways, but like that doesn't get a lot of resources from me. So I think it's like, if you're not going to do the social media thing, you have to work hard elsewhere to kind of support your marketing in other ways.
Yeah. But yeah, very true. Okay, so just to wrap up, one thing I wanted to come back to is you mentioned in the early days you were working with some regional distributors and like Bizzuto's, Associated Grocers. Obviously, this would be frozen supply chain. Can you just talk a little bit about like, what was it like to kind of onboard and work with some of those guys? Because probably a lot of people listening might be more familiar with, the national ones and UNFI and KeHE, but, not know what's different about working maybe with some of the more regional ones and just, any kind of lessons learned on frozen distribution in general.
Absolutely. Actually, this is a great thing, great lesson learned, or a great tip to share. We started out with the regional guys. So we started, our first distributor was a distributor called Northeast Specialty Foods, and they still put in POs for pickup every 2 weeks. They still order like 80 cases from us every 2 weeks. They service like Boston area up to mid-coast Maine, and they do a lot of like small stores and butcher shops for us. And so they still are a strong distributor because those places have like a single door freezer and they're not buying from UNFI, right? So that's like, there's these people who are servicing and getting to the stores that are not hitting the minimums with the big guys. We started with those. We worked with Northeast Specialty. Then I think the second one we added on was Marty's Local, who services like the Berkshires and Eastern New York and Southern Vermont. And for us, like having these regional distributors has been so key to our success, and also just like financially, because the small guys, we also work with a lot of home delivery services too. We brought on Imperfect Misfits in the last couple of years, but like even regionally, some of the home, like the milkman services that have become like the home deliveries, all these small guys and this patchwork of regional distributors, they're not going to be giving you chargebacks. They're not asking for a lot of stuff. They're just asking for a consistent product and like support, the marketing support in terms of like you just developing a brand that people want, not marketing support in terms of giving them promotions. So it's just like really good partnerships. A lot of times you're working directly with the owners. And so it's just helped us like with then bring on UNFI and KeHE, which obviously are completely different animals, to have this diversification of our business, right? Where like if something is, we got a mistake chargeback from UNFI for $15,000 at Christmas time, another Merry Christmas, for like an erroneous slotting fee that wasn't meant to happen. And it's like, okay, well, that sucks, but at least we have all these other distributors that are going to be paying their bills, and there's no surprises coming. So I would always advise people, like when you're starting out, to start with the regional distributors, like one at a time as you like gain your confidence. And then once you have experience with like fulfilling those orders, then, pursue something like a UNFI or KeHE with a chain. And I honestly like still now am seeking regional distributors in other areas of the country because I know that they're reaching stores and they have sales teams sometimes, and they know more about their product catalog than the UNFI reps that are like completely overwhelmed with how much they have to offer. And they're honestly not for any fault of their own. They're just not going to be there to promote your product like a regional distributor will. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. Great lessons. Thank you. So I think that we can wrap here. This has been such an interesting and fun discussion, and just really cool to learn from all of your expertise around social media. So thanks for sharing that kind of story and timeline with everybody. Anything else?
I'm glad we could commiserate on our trolls.
Yes, I know. I'm going to start sending you some screenshots.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything for people to know if they want to follow you, follow the brand, like LinkedIn, Instagram?
Absolutely. I would say I'm a Instagram, like that's like the best way to contact me. So if you follow Jaju Pierogi, so it's JajuPierogi, Jaju Pierogi, and you send a message there, I'm there on the Instagram. It's just me. So you can reach me there, and like then we can, branch off from there to email if we want to have a chat or anything like that. But I am a full believer in paying it forward. There's so many businesses that helped us as we were growing. So if there's any way that I can help anybody else, I'm happy to.
All right. Well, that does it for another episode of the Startup CPG podcast. Thank you so much to Vanessa White, who's been our guest from Jaju Pierogi. Definitely follow up with her on Instagram, also on the Startup CPG Slack. And thank you again for joining us. And thanks to all of you guys for listening along. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast today, it would really help us out if you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I am Daniel Scharff. I'm the host and founder of Startup CPG. Please feel free to reach out or add me on LinkedIn. If you're a potential sponsor that would like to appear on the podcast, please email partnerships@startupcpg.com. And reminder to all of you out there, we would love to have you join the community. You can sign up at our website, startupcpg.com, to learn about our webinars, events, and Slack channel. If you enjoyed today's music, you can check out my band. It's the Super Fantastics on Spotify Music. On behalf of the entire Startup CPG team, thank you so much for listening and your support. See you next time.